Welcome to another episode of the MoxStars podcast. I am your host, Evan Kunai, and I am here with Jordan Garcia.
Hello.
And Christopher Ritter. He's here. He's here.
Let's fucking go.
Very drastic energy levels.
Yeah, quite the dichotomy. If you guys want to support the show, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. You can find the links in the description below. You can also find our link tree. Follow that, and you can find everywhere, like literally where we are everywhere. And
geo-tracking and everything.
If you are watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell for updates. Bing. And today we're having quite the discussion. We're talking about interaction and how it is interactive to the game.
Yeah.
Jordan's favorite subject, literally.
Is this my favorite subject? It might be.
Yeah.
It's definitely up there.
I mean, your style of play is like speed. You want to see more cards so that you have more interaction.
Yeah, I mean, definitely control player at heart that, learned how to leverage that into being a greedy player. I love interaction, and I think kind of my top thesis statement for this whole episode has been put more gosh dang interaction in your decks. Whether it's competitive, I mean, they usually have enough interaction, but casual decks, you can play casually and still play interaction. I think it's very important.
And even if you're worried about removing a card that you want to play for an interaction piece, remember, there's always interaction stapled to bodies. If you just want to play bodies.
That is my favorite thing about deck building in general, is just you have all these like base staples that you need to hit, whether it's ramp, interaction, whatever, but making it work and synergize with what your deck's already trying to do. So if you're like, I play a Jetmir list and, it's a creature-based strategy, it runs 43 creatures, playing something like Cathar Commando. You get that artifact and enchantment removal on the body, so you get both upsides.
All right. Save it for the primary discussion. Before we get into it, we are going to start off by talking about two of our favorite pieces of interaction before we get into the primary subject. And let's kick it off. Let's start with Chris. What do you got, man?
Oh, we're starting with me.
Yeah.
I'm going off the dome with Dismember. It's a classic two pieces of Phyrexian black mana, one colorless. Target creature gets -5 until end of turn. Gets around indestructible, gets around whatever you need to.
Kills all those Theros gods.
Oh, for sure. It's going to cost 1 mana most of the time. 4 life is nothing in a game of EDH. It always feels good in your hand. It's almost always a relevant removal piece. If you're not holding that in your hand, you want to be holding swords or even Path. A single basic land is also pretty much nothing in a game of EDH.
If you're in white, you should probably be playing those two cards.
Yeah, probably both. I think both, just like for card density quality and like stuff like that. It's just great unconditional removal, and Dismember included in mono black, or just if you're running black. I think you play Dismember.
You never even have to worry about having the black pit, which is incredible.
Yeah, Jordan is a famous Grixis player, and there have been times when he's taken Dismember out of the deck, and then he just comes right back in.
It's hard. It's give and take. I find that more often than not, I take it out because I'm playing ad nauseum, and I have to really watch that life total and taking 4 off casting that, because I'm never paying 1 black to cast it.
Right? Yeah,
it's not good at 1 black.
No, it is not great really. At 1 black. Yeah. But the neg 5 has been so relevant for so many years.
It
always puts in work.
Is it good at 1 black and fire, then paying the 2 life?
Like pay 2 life and then 1 in the black?
Yeah.
If it's taking any creature off the board for 1 black, 1 colorless, that is a great rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
unconditional.
I think that's where it's like value comes in, is like there's a flexible cost to the whole thing. Like you can, at a minimum, pay 1 colorless mana and pay 4 life, and you can sit there with minimal resources held up and have a piece of interaction, have a piece of removal, and not to mention, it has one of the sickest artworks from Secret Lair.
True dat.
Yeah, it's hard not to play it when you have that.
The Yawgmoth, like horror movie poster.
Yeah, the Yawgmoth Bonesaw version of it. Yeah,
Bonesaw.
I've got you for 3 minutes.
All right, Evan. What is your favorite piece of interaction or underrated piece of interaction?
Well, I had like 2, and we had a little discussion beforehand. I had a hard time picking because I love both, and I want to make a case for Party, but Concerted Defense just is not as good as an offer you can't refuse. From Streets of New Capenna, if you don't know what it is 1 blue mana, counter target non-creature spell, and then the controller of that spell creates 2 treasure tokens.
Have those treasure tokens in a game of EDH.
Yeah.
Not to beat that point into the ground, but there's a lot of things where the downside is irrelevant in this game.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
You're hitting an ad nause with an offer you can't refuse. It's like
Just the fact that it just counter any spell. Counter any spell, like
yeah.
2 can hurt. Like 2 treasures can hurt, and it can give somebody a good opportunity. But just the versatility of the counterspell, if you play it well, if you time it well, I think the downside it will be minimal most of the time.
Well, I think it's just exponentially better because it is so much more flexible than concerted defenses. Like this is something where you can counter your own spells with it to somewhat create a ritual.
That's
so
true.
you can.
It happens semi-regularly.
Yeah, if you pick up half your library or whatever with Peer into the Abyss or an ad nause or whatever, you're looking at it and all of a sudden you're casting, I don't know, a Soul Ring, and then you hit it with a mental
Taxian Probe or
exactly.
Mox Diamond, you don't even bother discarding the land too.
Exactly, because you can and then you just sit there and you counter you basically counter the counter to create a ritual with like a mental misstep on a Soul Ring, and you create 2 treasures, you still get your Soul Ring, and now you're up 4 mana to continue your run. You're essentially storming off at that point, and I think this card is just so much better in decks that want to maintain advantage, create a storm, and push your initiative forward.
Yeah, Concerted Defense is a single blue instant, and it counters any spell, right?
No, it's only non-creature. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's the downside. The only non-creature, unless they pay 1 for each creature in your party, or plus for each creature in your party. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it makes you inherently think like you have to have a creature-heavy deck to benefit off of having a counterspell, which a lot of times those are kind of incongruous things.
There's a lot of, people underestimate party. I think we've learned that. Like we've seen the party deck play, and that just the precon was devastating, even with Sans Blue. So there are a lot of creatures out there that just so happen to fit into the party mold, where you can play them out. They can be a stacks piece, and then you're also sitting on a considered defense, and boom, like you're playing Najeela. Najeela's a warrior. Like great, now you have to pay 1 more to pay for this tax.
Right.
Considered defense.
But bottom line, you're being cute. Offer you can't refuse is
it is just
far and
the
away the better
card.
card.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is unconditional.
Yeah, I would not run Concerted Defense in an Ad Nauseam deck, but there's just too much upside to ignore an offer you can't refuse in an Ad Nauseam deck.
Right. All right. Jordan, hit us.
Yeah, I know I got a little excited earlier, but some pieces that I like. These are actually ones that have just kind of been popping up into my purview more recently, just seeing how good they are. Is March of Otherworldly Light. Came out pretty recently.
It's funny that your card is white and my card is blue. I am not historically a blue player at all.
Switching here.
You are not historically a white player at all. Yeah.
March of Otherworldly Light, just being able to pitch a white card to exile now.
Can you pitch multiple white cards?
You can. That's the whole March set is so good for this.
There we go.
This and then the March of Swirling Mist, I think, are the 2 best from this series.
Yeah.
Just such a great removal spell, and it kind of gives me that Heliod's Intervention effect, which I love, by being able to hit multiple issues at once, but you get the huge upside of the cost reduction. So I think I keep playing Heliod's Intervention, but I think this card is just better.
I go back and forth on these. I think if I'm building in white, March and Heliod's will both end up in the initial draft of the deck. More often than not, Heliod's going to make the final cut.
That's fair.
March is going to get cut unless, I have space, but there's so much good removal in white already.
A lot of good removal in white, so yeah, you got a lot of competition. And also, if you're just splashing white, you have to be conscious of how many white cards are you going to feasibly be able to pitch to this spell.
You're not getting the cost reduction. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Much like Dismember, you got to look at it how you want to cast it and not that 1 black, because it probably gets way worse.
Yeah, you're sacrificing on hand advantage, card advantage.
Yeah. So if you're just splashing white for a few removal pieces, this might not be the card. But if you're heavy in white, you're mono white, 2 color, I think you should consider it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. It's basically an exile target non-land permanent, which, it doesn't say that because you're missing planeswalkers, but it's just valuable to be able to hit something that is slowing you down or something. And
multiple things, hit a stacks piece, hit a win con, all at the same time. It's just too good.
It's just so significantly
better. Gives me the Force of
than,
Vigor effect, actually.
Yeah, March of Burgeoning Life, the green version of it. They put in the wording there so that you can't hit something exactly. It's you have to go over the mana cost in order to target something and search your library for a creature and put it on the battlefield. This one, I thought they would do the same thing, like even with Swirling Mist, but they didn't. They just created, it's funny, that little wording hinders March of Burgeoning Life more than when it does this. So this is much stronger. Yeah.
I mean, we see that happen all the time in like a set where they have a full cycle and one or two is just supremely more powerful than the others.
Yeah, full standout for sure.
Yeah. So my other card on here is also one I've been seeing more and more and loving more and more, and that's Dress Down. It's actually an interactive enchantment with flash for 1 and a blue, and it just says when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So it cantrips, it replaces itself, which is always great with interaction. But it says all creatures lose all abilities as a flat static effect, and then you have to sacrifice it at the end of that turn. So this is great for stopping a Thassa's Oracle win. You see that come down. This is great for stopping a Dockside from coming down and killing that ETB effect. But also just things that are already on the battlefield. You know, Evan plays Zakama, so if you have a value Zakama out, like that
it's going to stop that infinite mana loop in a lot of decks.
Yeah, there's just because it has flash, this card is good. It would not otherwise.
Are you playing this anytime you have blue mana?
A lot more frequently, yes. Especially in like my competitive decks, there's just times where Stacks is more and more popular. We keep talking about it. So being able to just say, all right, no hate bears this entire turn. Go.
Yeah, I think we've been seeing a lot of creature based decks.
Tons, more and more as we get to the late game or the mid game.
And this is one of those things where it's like a Winota player or someone has Winota on the battlefield. Even in the 99, we're seeing that like Winota is still incredibly powerful, and this is one card that just shuts that down.
Go to combat, flash and a Dress Down.
Yep.
I did it against, what did we see? What's the Sphinx that casts the odd mana spells?
Yeah.
Crap.
Yeah, can't remember.
Whatever that giant Sphinx that casts the odd mana spell you reveal off the top. Anything with an attack trigger, anything with a great creature, huge ability like that, stopping that from resolving is very, very good.
Yeah, we're talking about you, Marg. If you're listening to this, we're talking about you.
Actually was playing against it in the real life too the other day, and it's a super strong deck. But just being able to hose any creature strategy for a turn is extremely powerful. Being able to turn off an opposition agent so you can resolve a Worldly Tutor. It is just so much good application. Yeah,
it's not only incredibly powerful, but you said it does replace itself. So there is potential to run into more interaction with it. So like you're 100%. laying down the stack. And then you're basically shutting everyone off and creating card advantage for yourself. Yeah,
I think Control Shells like it because it gets to cantrip and you kind of prevent that one-for-one kind of card disadvantage in a 4-player game. But like I said, I played in my Greedy Grixis decks because it just lets you go. It lets you like just take off anything that's holding you back and just go for the turn. So I think it is good in multiple different situations.
Yeah, it's wild that we all chose enchantments for like our favorite. Are good. Like all of our second options are enchantments, and it's one of the card types that has just the least amount of interaction towards.
It makes you think that you should be packing enchantment removal in your deck.
Yeah, like you said, you would play Heliod's Intervention over a lot of other options like March of Otherworldly Light because it just hits.
Hitting enchantments is really good and very underrated. It does not happen a lot. All right, guys, you have a few more cards. Chris, what's your other card now that we're talking about enchantments?
I'm going into a whole cycle, and I'm missing the red card from that cycle. Is there a red card in that cycle before I get into it? We're talking Weeblet, Darksteel Mutation, Trapped in the Moon, and at a slightly lower tier, in my opinion, Kenrith's Transformation. So what we're doing is we're turning off your commander. Not destroying them, not sending them back to the command zone to be recast, but turning them off. So Weeblet is the black version that's been around since Arabian Nights, recently reprinted in Modern Horizons 2, I think, and that's going to phase out any target creature until Weeblet leaves the battlefield. Darksteel Mutation is the white one. That is going to turn any creature into a 0/1 indestructible artifact creature, I believe. Trapped in the Moon is going to turn them into a land. And Kenrith's Transformation, and this is the weakest one, it's going to turn them into just a 3/3 elk, which then some other piece of removal can hit, and then they get their commander back.
I do see why you're saying that's weaker, but it cantrips, so I do think it gives you a different upside.
I would like it, I think, if it had flash.
That's fair.
You know, I think that would be the move there. Not that the other ones in the cycle have flash or that it's underpowered.
It'll make
it's
up for
it's
that.
just it's half a tier below the other three that I named.
I will say, not being able to like interact. The other one that's on here that's not necessarily from this set is Song of the Dryads.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Because,
Evan played it on me this week.
Yeah, and it sent you to the Shadow Realm is what it
Yeah,
did.
I mean, he hit my Thrasios once I had gotten my Thrasios Seedborn Muse set up going, and I was just like, I went through every spell in my list through my head, and I was like, there's nothing I have that will remove this.
Well, the table looked at me like I was crazy. It was like, why are you hitting Thrasios? You should hit the Seaborn Muse. And I'm like, nope. You take the Thrasios away, the Seaborn Muse is just useless.
Yeah. So to your point, Chris, yeah, the lack of interaction you have once it's like a land is crazy good. Nerfing a commander, nerfing just like a really good value creature that you just pretty much have no hope of getting back. It's a very good effect.
Yeah, Weeblet, you need to be packing enchant. I mean, yeah. For any of these, enchantment removal, Weeblet,
As you just
can't
said,
do anything because
plays.
it's phased out. Darksteel Mutation, you need to exile it somehow because it's indestructible.
Right.
Trapped in the Moon, you have to have a Ghost Quarter or a Wasteland or a Strip Mine, some piece of land removal in your deck. Kenrith's Transformation, anything will get
You
your
can
commander
block
back,
and just,
but
yeah.
you know, it makes it durable. You know, you want to keep that commander off the board for a few turns,
That
probably,
sticky
anytime you're
interaction.
playing this. Yeah.
Right. And I did look into it. Weeblet was printed in Arabian Nights and then most recently Double Masters.
That's right.
Double
Did
Masters.
get that reprint.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's super undervalued. They're only charging like $150 for it, so it's very undervalued.
removal for sure.
Yeah, it's worth looking up the Arabian Nights version because it has some janky card text. Because
I love
I don't know if phasing was established at that point necessarily.
No, it was not.
Yeah. So
It definitely was not. I can see the paragraph
They're-
of text on that.
Well, the funny thing is, if you go and you look both of them up, they actually have different, they have different text. Like they haven't quite been errated to say the same exact thing. So kind of a weird.
Just
little
go together.
discrepancy there.
yeah. And a fun fact about Weeblets, they are a medieval prison. And if you've seen The Dark Knight Rises, that is the type of prison that Bane was kept in.
outta
It's
here.
a pit that you're in the bottom
Yeah.
of.
It's
Wow.
Yep.
where you get forgotten, essentially.
Yeah, crazy good flavor on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the final card. I'll move into it because you were saying that Kenrith's Transformation would be a lot better if it had Flash. And there's a card that was recently printed in the Kamigawa Commander decks, and that is Swift Reconfiguration. I think,
I like it.
a good card.
It's in the same template. I think it does have a downside still.
yeah,
Which
It's
is
a
that
little
you can-
different.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll let
you got to you got to be able to kill an artifact, and I think that is an ever present thing in the game. Is like even if you have any of the Weeblet and stuff like that, as long as you have enchantment removal, you're safe. And I guess that's what we're talking about is that enchantment removal is super undervalued. It's not very common, so these cards are stronger because of that.
You really just get to take advantage of it. Like,
Right.
It's like kind of taking advantage of like landfall and land strategies because people don't play land destruction. It's like almost nobody's playing at least like more than one piece of enchantment removal. in
Yeah,
the deck.
currently I think enchantments are like one of the greatest ways to generate mana, like in ramp. And so like using Serra Sanctum with a Swift Reconfiguration just adds to that count, and so you're generating more mana that way.
Wild Growth
But-
is insane. Like a turn
Yeah,
one Wild Growth,
yes.
it just feels so freaking good in a mid-range deck. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, it blows my mind that it's 79 cents.
It's
or was.
It's stupid good. It's so good.
Yeah, and so I guess the utility you see with Swift Reconfiguration was I wasn't utilizing it to its full capability because when it was printed, the initial reaction from the community was, wow, this just goes infinite with Devoted Druid.
Yeah, I mean, once everybody got whiff of the combo, that was
Yeah.
pretty much all it was about. It is still a good like interactive piece. I think it's nice that you can have it in your deck for both options if you're running the combo, but you're also not worried about using it to interact at the right time.
And you can use it to save your own creature. Like all creatures get, like a Dismember comes across, comes
like
on
a
the
targeted
stack.
creature removal spell. It
Yeah.
stops it from being a creature on the stack.
And because you can still crew it once it's turned into a vehicle, you don't necessarily lose that creature. You
Right.
can, that's a smart play.
Super good.
Yeah.
I will say the major downside is unlike all the other removal pieces that we just talked about in that are enchantments, it doesn't stop the abilities. The creature doesn't lose any ability.
Right, which
So-
is,
Static abilities, right?
yeah, it's a downside.
Yeah, any abilities. So you can, Thrasios can still activate even if he's not a creature kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, and that's why it's a downside and it's an upside. Like when you're using it to take your own creature off the board, like as an option for creature removal. If your commander is completely devoted to your strategy. You can just turn in an artifact, make it harder
like
to
save
hit.
Seedborn Muse from a board wipe, and then just recast Thracia.
This is classic Evan right here. Swift reconfiguration and offer you can't refuse. Both interaction pieces that have possible upsides.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get to some combo nonsense.
Yeah, create that value.
Yeah.
And like
maximizing that deck.
when Jordan, you were playing your Malcolm build, Swift reconfiguration was way better than I thought it was ever going to be.
Yeah, that put in work right there.
And the funny thing is that if you play it after attackers are declared, and as long as it resolves, they can't crew the creature again and have it re-enter combat. It completely removes the creature from combat, even if they do happen to remove it before damage is dealt.
Even just using it as a way, like I've had it in the past to just save your own life total. Like you have like a beefy 9/9 or something like that, and just throwing it out there just to make sure you don't get slapped for 9 a turn. Like when you're like late game, that comes in huge.
Right, and I've just found it to it definitely is like a powerhouse in my deck for 1 mana.
Lots of flexibility. Yeah, for 1 mana, like the flexibility we just discussed, all the different modalities it has. I think it is worth a slot a lot of time, especially if you're running the combo.
I will say the last thing. It is the only card that I've ever seen where the borderless variant is cheaper than the bordered variant because it doesn't include the flavor text.
Flavor text. Best flavor text.
Yeah, here, let me see if I can't find the flavor text quick because it is just too good. Swift reconfiguration. It says, on the bright side, the bear now has cup holders. Just one of the best flavor texts out there.
It's pretty hard to ignore how great that is.
All right, are you guys ready to move on to our main discussion?
Let's go.
Jordan, what's the thesis statement again?
I said it at the top, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it for the rest of my life. Please put more interaction in your decks. Casual, competitive, anywhere in between. You need to be interacting. It's just not dropping 6/6s for 6 mana and swinging. We gotta make sure we're stopping people. We're keeping people honest at the table. Someone's always going to be greedier than another player, so it's kind of on everybody to show up with interaction in their decks.
There's 4 people there. Everyone's trying to do their own thing. You can't do your thing if everyone else gets to do their thing first.
Exactly. Yeah. So you might not like counterspells. A lot of people don't in casual pods, and that's fine. But like, still packing a braid for when somebody casts like I don't know, but like any creature, any fucking stacks piece that's a blood moon effect.
You have to be able to contribute to the game. And that's what this discussion is about, is building your decks to be able to contribute to the game, whether it's on the stack, on the field, sorcery speed, instant speed. You just like stopping an opponent from winning, like that's interaction. Stopping an opponent from stopping you from winning, that's interaction. So
removing a Smothering Tithe because just nobody can afford to feasibly pay for Smothering Tithe every turn. So you just expect that it's going to snowball out of control. So someone needs to remove that. Otherwise, odds are that person is just winning that game just for getting to resolve the spell.
You're in friendly competition with the other 3 people at the table. You want to do things that sometimes you want to do things that will help the table overall, even if they also help your opponents, such as blowing up the Smothering Tithe and, giving everyone else a chance as well at that point.
It's political as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge topic that we can cover another day, but politics in the game of interaction. So, like, knowing that, like, you can make a deal with someone, like, hey, can you blow up that tithe? And, that sort of, like, relieves the pressure, knowing that that player is going to, like, take their foot off the gas for you and give you immunity potentially for a turn. It's an integral part of the game. It is absolutely necessary. And if you're not building your decks with interaction, you're just going to sit there and you're going to have a bad time.
There's inevitably going to be something that just stops you from doing what you want to do. And if you didn't build a deck that really considers other decks at the table, then all you're going to be doing is looking at your hand, figuring out what your game plan is, and trying to execute that. And you're going to get frustrated when there's all this stuff popping up that's stopping you from happening. Because guess what? That's what happens when you play a 4-player game. People are trying to also win and stop you from winning.
Yeah, I think when people talk about interaction, they're not necessarily thinking about removal. Like, interaction on the stack is primarily, at least the majority think that it's counterspells. Like counterspells and stopping someone from doing something. So, like, I guess there are counterspells with upside. There are some that are overrated, some that are underrated, and some that are just unfairly powerful, like Force of Will. You're paying for card advantage, but it is just you have to hold no resources up for it.
Yeah, I think I love counterspells. Obviously, I'm a blue player, but I don't think that counterspells are even close to the end-all be-all for interaction, and I don't think they're even the best form of interaction.
Yeah, you need them in the moment.
You need them in the moment.
Huge
exactly.
drawback.
And usually, it's even better if you're trying to you need them to make sure that you're resolving something, like an ad nauseam or whatever. But like, if you're just relying on counterspells to get you through the game, and you're just now looking at 3 players, like, all right, is now my time to counter it? Is now my time to counter it? Like, what are you doing that gets you any closer to winning this game? Because it doesn't seem like you're doing anything. So, but like other interaction pieces, like being able to destroy enchantments, like we've been saying, being able to stop the creature at the right time, that gets you further, stopping on, like shutting down these like value engines essentially. Like, yeah, that lets you stay in the game without someone running off.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're interacting, you're buying yourself time to do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's really just assess where your deck is at. Like, where does your deck thrive? Are you going to the late game? Do you need to stop a few people that are going to get some systems in place before you get off to the races? If so, you might want to figure out where you need to interact so that you can accomplish what you're trying to do.
Yeah, as you grow as a player, if you're more of a casual player at the moment and you've just wanted to venture into more competitive play, you're going to become a better player by including more interactions in your deck, and you're going to learn that over time. It doesn't come with like, reading a deck list, because you might not know how to use that interaction in the right moment. So I think as time has gone on, I've gone from value engines to interaction. I've swayed that direction more heavily just because I find that it wins me more games. And since you've been a blue player for a majority of your career, Jordan, you're now starting to like stray into Naya. You're starting to feel my pain a little bit. It's Naya's like primary focus is creating ways to avoid interaction.
Well, I was going to say I've actually going the opposite direction, and I'm leaning more away from as much interacting and on the stack with counterspells and everything, and more resolving a singular value engine. I've gone the opposite direction because you just burn yourself out if you're just trying to counter everything.
Yeah, it's funny how like a counterbalance will sit there and it'll interact with the table with every single spell that's cast. The potential to reveal a card that is just going to...
Yeah, we talk about like sticky interaction.
Yeah, it's
something that just stays there.
It changes. It puts like a mental block in your opponent's minds to say like, oh,
it's a mental game. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, sometimes it just stops the whole table in its tracks, where like you revealed a land countering a mana crypt, and then the whole table goes around and they're like, well, I can't play my Jeweled Lotus now. I can't play.
Well, not even that, but even if there's even if you don't know that they have the counter spell, the idea that they might have the counter for it stops you from making plays.
Yeah, all the time.
Either you're going to wait another turn to go off so you're more sure, or you're not going to make the play at all.
Or cast a spell that you like, not the ideal one. You're like, I've done that all the time. Like the second spell I wanted to cast, like, all right, I'll just get this out, see what's on top or something like that.
Yeah, you're almost like baiting it. You're baiting them out,
which doesn't feel good. You're down a card, you're down mana that turn.
Yeah.
In our we played a high powered game this week, and Jordan, I knew you were holding up counters. I didn't know if you had the right counters. So I had a creature based win con and a non creature based win con that I could have tutored for in the moment, and I had to make a choice between them based on what tutor I thought you might have had in your hand, or what counter you might have had in your hands, and I ultimately chose the wrong one. I went for Dark Ritual instead of going for my Protean Hulk.
Yeah, that's right. And I bid on the counter on the Dark Rit, so you wouldn't have the mana.
You were able to counter the Dark Rit. Yeah.
And then I ended up having to bully Jordan into countering the Protean Hulk too. Like he had more than one counter spell.
I mean, as is the way when you're the mid-range Thrasios player.
Yeah, I didn't have an answer to it, so I had to like force Jordan into taking care of it for me. Like there is that line of thought too. You can make a good assertion of what cards are in a deck just by the color, maybe even by the commander of your opponent.
Yeah, once you start knowing general archetypes and stuff like that, and which colors thrive in that, then you can probably ascertain, like you said, what commander is. What their game plan is generally trying to accomplish. Like, are they going to be on their front foot? Are they going to be on their back foot? Are they going to be sandbagging interaction?
And you keep playing in the same pod and you start learning player tendencies.
Yeah, that changes everything too.
Yeah, that's...
Instead of new people all the time, you're starting to know everybody.
Yeah, you can
Chris knowing that I'm holding counter spells.
Yeah, you can talk strategy all you want on a surface level, but everything changes once you start including the the tendencies of the players in your pod. It changes so much of
all politics is local. So even at the Magic table.
I mean, that was the big thing when we went to Marchesa. We sat at the table and we had seen hundreds of interactions. You know, we had played against each other enough times to like at least think that we had a good idea of what we were going to expect. And the thing that just blew me away was that every other player that was sitting there, they like had this level of fierceness to their like just, I don't know, it was, they had seen thousands of interactions. It wasn't just hundreds. Like, we thought we were prepared. They were so much more prepared than us because they knew when to interact. Like, that was a big thing. Like, Jordan and I actually got matched up at the tournament, and we sat there and we lost to a turn 3 Hermit Druid who had cast a Neoform, sacrificing their Birds of Paradise and going into Thassa's Oracle and activating Hermit Druid on the stack to win the game. I had interaction in my hand. I chose not to use it because we had a Deafening Silence and a Rule of Law on the board, and I thought we were safe. But it's just like knowing when to use it, because you can kind of like see. I knew, like, my thought, and I had a Ranger Captain of Eos on the board. I thought that they were going to go for the Dread Return line because that's what I had seen. Like,
it's the classic Hermit Druid line. You know, you've seen it 1,000 times.
Yeah, I've seen it enough times, and just for him to just sneak under the radar with that Neoform was just it
was a very clever play.
Yeah, it was very clever, and it just
it just goes what you're talking about. It's just like, as you progress from being, you know, an okay player, a casual player, if you want to get more into like the competitive side of things, just like seeing more interactions, like Chris was saying, like knowing that I had counter spells in hand and trying to accomplish your game plan anyway. So it's like, you're now playing the player, right? And like knowing what that deck is trying to do. How much mana do they have open? How much mana do I have? Can I afford to cast one spell to bait interaction? Like all these things where you start playing outside of your deck. You stop playing your 100 cards and you start playing against 400 cards. And like that, I think, is really where you start escalating to a higher level of not even just like competition, but just being a higher level of player. You know, you have a higher like mind towards the game. Yeah,
the more you interact, the better the player you become.
Yeah.
I mean, the more interaction also creates more varied games because the game's not, you don't have 4 people on a single track heading towards a destination.
Yes.
You have that fracturing and going in different directions because there's now interaction.
Wildly.
Yeah.
Like there are some games that just, you think it's going to be like the first 30 minutes is like, oh, this person's got it. And then somehow 2 hours later, we're still playing the same game.
That God hand you had.
Yeah. And just like, you know, everybody gets a chance to win at the table because of interaction, essentially.
Yeah, and there's more ways to interact than people might think, whether it's like the dismember or that like taking something out of the game with a Weeblyette.
That single piece removal or something.
You know, like I think Mayhem Devil is overlooked because there's so many
great interaction card.
Yeah, sacrifice focused abilities that Mayhem Devil can, like, even just fetch lands or whatever, but tossing 1 damage around is not like don't underrate that because it is.
I mean, treasures powerful. Everywhere, clues everywhere, like
incremental value adds up.
Yes.
Yep. And you're just killing things on the board like that. It has that option. So like the value of Mayhem Devil. I mean, there's ways to stop interaction on the board too. Like one of my favorite pieces at 1 mana. I think I love low mana curves, but Allosaurus Shepherd just completely turns off counter spells for for green things.
Yeah, actually, we have a little list here, but essentially, like what you're saying is like anything that's makes things uncounterable and stuff like that is it's a form of interaction. You're interacting with counterspells that people have in their hands that you don't know about, and they just have to sit on them. I can't tell you how many times I've had interaction for your cards, and that they're useless pieces of cardboard when you have Allosaurus Shepherd, a 1 green creature, just sitting on the battlefield. It drives me crazy. Yeah, so we have like Vexing Shusher is another one. You know, like that is a form of interaction. You actually have to bait out the counterspell a lot of time, but it's still that kind of mind games you're talking about. Like if they see that you have the mana to activate Vexing Shusher, even if they have a counterspell, there's a lot of time they're not going to cast that counterspell because they know they're going to lose it.
Right. You sit on the mana, you sit on 1 open mana, and it's like,
and then you did
anything.
Nothing, and you countered their counterspell.
Right.
Because now you get to have 2 mana for the next spell you're going to cast, and you're still going to be able to make it uncounterable.
Yeah. If you can telegraph a play that is as valuable as holding a counterspell in a lot of times.
Sometimes more, because again, you get around that 1-for-1 mindset where maybe you just 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 the table because you scared people away. You have a Malevolent Hermit out, and you have the 1 blue mana up.
A stupid piece that requires another stupid piece, and then you get 3 player turns of them doing nothing, and you were bluffing.
And you're bluffing the whole time. Yeah, you're just trying to buy yourself a turn cycle until you can get to the value that you need.
Invecting Shusher is political in its own way, where it doesn't exclusively say, the target spell you control
Right.
can't be countered. It's like target spell can't be countered. So you can protect counter spells in a battle. You're watching stuff happen on the stack.
Protect a removal piece,
Exactly. You're like, that needs to go away. And then that player's like, nuh-uh, like Fierce Guardianship. And then you're just like, ha.
Sure.
Yeah. Shush,
and then
shush.
they burned a counterspell on top of it. The Fierce Guardianship's gone. You kept the piece that needed to stay in play. Lots of good versatility there.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things now, it's funny that it just keeps rising in price and hasn't seen a reprint in forever. Grand Abolisher is just the best version
Please
of
reprint
that.
this.
That's like a $40 card right now, I think.
Yeah.
I think I bought it.
I'm looking at buying it.
I bought
weeks
it
ago.
6 weeks ago at like 20.
Dude, I know.
Yeah.
I was looking at it right when you bought it. It's
Yeah.
absolutely insane.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Please reprint it.
Well, if you're in green, you can play Docent of the Falling Leaf.
Docent of the
It's
Falling
slightly worse.
It is significantly worse.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not even slightly worse.
Okay, but it does cost more mana. You got to give me that.
It is more expensive to cast.
So,
I think it's good, for what you're doing in your Dina deck. It's being there to catch you with your Protean Hulk.
Yeah, when you resolve the Protean Hulk sacrifice, right, your setup is to grab that so that you don't get an interaction piece after that. I think it's a great card. You
you
just
grab
have to be
Docent.
aware of it, and so you can play around it.
Yeah, you grab Docent and activated Sleeper.
that is
and
correct. On
yeah,
the first activation,
Yeah.
that is, they're both 3 CMC, and then you have Docent on the board. Nobody else is casting spells now. They can activate abilities to interrupt your line, but you have activated Sleeper on the board, copying the Protean Hulk, which is now in your graveyard. Then you're going to sack that activated Sleeper, and then you're going to go for your win con.
Yeah. So then you have a fully protected win con. So with the printing,
Except for activated abilities.
I guess
if that is
90% protected.
relevant.
Yeah. There'll be a few times it is, but I
yeah,
think more
it
often
can be.
than not, you're probably gonna win that game if you've gotten that far.
Yeah, it's really hard to wiggle under the radar of what Docent and what Grand Abolisher prevent players from doing. Like Grand Abolisher, the only weakness that it has is a more recent printing, and that's like Beseiju, or Otawara. Those Kamigawa lands are the one thing that just happened to slip under the radar.
Some people may call those pushed, but I do think that having that ability is something that the game did not have, and I think it's really good.
It's necessary.
Because otherwise effects like that just go unanswered. You don't get an opportunity. Like say you're holding counter spells that don't hit creatures. Okay, well my first spell will be Grand Abolisher. Now all the counter spells in your hand are useless.
Interaction should be fair at its base.
Yeah.
Yep.
Big time agree. You're trying to equalize.
Yeah, even I think they scale up to interaction. And I guess that just leans right into the next thing is that interaction has extended to not just being an instant, not just being a sorcery, not just being an enchantment, but they've now put it on lands. It's the channel ability has
so good.
Yeah, it scales up with power because even though you're destroying something and you get to go search for, I think that's maybe where it falters a little bit. It just allows you an opponent to search for a land with a basic type.
Yeah.
So it definitely has its drawback. You give them something
slightly bigger downside than just the Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, or Assassin's Trophy.
Yeah.
It forces them to search for a basic, and when you're playing at that highest tier, it's not many people are playing basics at all. So
yeah, but the
they
basic
get
type,
nothing out of it.
They get a duel or whatever, which is a downside, but the
the
uncounterable casting of any spell removal, I think is definitely worth it.
Yeah, the payoff should be larger.
Yeah, the payoff is pretty dang good, and I even think the blue one is better.
Oh, Otawara?
I
do too, yeah.
Just again, being able to bounce a stack piece, being able to get a bounce a Grand Abolisher,
they're all playable except for the red one, essentially.
Yeah,
and Jordan can make a case for that now. He's looking at playing what is it, Sokenzan? Yeah.
Yeah, just
what's the benefit there?
Jetmir.
Okay.
Just hitting the literally creature density.
Sure. If you have the land
I don't
spot.
run any single land that taps for just a red mana. And I only have 6% of the color pips is red. So I decided to not put that in the deck.
Yeah, that's probably smart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Just doing it because you can isn't necessarily optimal.
We like to build our decks that everything is, we min-max everything. Even my lands create creatures so that I can activate Jetmir or have Jetmir's ability trigger. But you got to be practical.
Yeah, it's a byproduct of the underrated overrun ability that Jetmir has printed on him.
So good. All right, so I want to pose a question to you guys because Evan disagreed with me, so I guess I'm posing this question to Evan and also Chris because you're the stacks player here. Do we think of stacks as interaction? I like to think yes because, like I said, with the uncounterable things, you don't see what these people are not able to cast and what's in their hand.
Yeah.
So you're interacting in that regard. Chris, what do you think?
I mean, it goes into a different category. It's going towards trying to do the same thing, which is disrupting your opponent's game plan. But I think it gets at it in a different way. I mean, when you're talking about interaction, I think classically interaction is going to be something that is responsive.
Okay.
Rather than passive. A lot of stacks pieces tend to be passive, preemptive, prophylactic, or whatever you want to call it. So I think they get at the same thing, but approach it in different ways where I would categorize them as different things.
Okay,
Like,
that's fair.
so in my stacks decks, I have the stacks build, and I am still thinking about a separate interaction package on top of that.
Right.
Just
still have your
because
interaction suite.
just because I have a ton of redundant stacks pieces where maybe your creatures aren't generating value and you can't attack me and you can't do this and this and this. I mean, I still want the swords in there. I still want the path in there. I still want, other creature-based removal pieces. So yeah, again, they're doing different things.
Disruption, not interaction.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're more interacting with your opponent's psyche with stacks than you are interacting with the board. I think they're more of a static way to stop interaction, which is why I classify it differently.
That's fair.
But there are some stacks pieces that actually interact, like Aura of Silence.
Aura of Silence is a great stacks piece that also interacts, yes.
Yeah, and
taxing everything for one, and then being able to, after you've shelled out and paid the taxes, now then getting it removed. I've done it plenty of times.
Yeah.
Well, that's something we've brought up a few times now, which is that you have interaction stapled to things.
Yes.
So
one for one is not good all the time, or most of the time.
It's just not good enough anymore.
Yes.
even Allosaurus Shepherd turns into an overrun effect. Like that's stapled on top of the uncounterability.
Yeah, would you play Allosaurus Shepherd if it was just the one green drop? I probably would.
Well, there have been times when I've had Allosaurus Shepherd on the board, and it being uncounterable and not being able to have your green spells countered is
So
valuable.
good.
It's very valuable. I feel like it is extra that they put like pay 6, everything gets, all your elves get base power 5/5. But I've had the Allosaurus Shepherd bounce back to my hand enough times, like on the stack, and had my spells countered in
so
response. So like snapping the Allosaurus Shepherd back to my hand so that they can counter like my Finale of Devastation is just like devastating because you think you're safe and you're not.
But you did require 2 pieces of interaction on the stack.
I did, yeah.
That is quite a bit to ask.
Right. And I think bouncing effects as interaction are more valuable than just removal because it plays into your opponent's psyche of saying like, I have to recast this to get it out there to reestablish myself. And that's where, this is kind of leaning into a different subject, but that's where I think Psych Rift is like way more valuable as a piece of interaction than a lot of other just like board wipes.
Oh, for sure.
Because
sure.
It says like, as the person who got Psych Rifted, like I have to spill this all back out in order to reestablish myself. When that's not necessarily the case, it's more like that's what is expected of you to do.
You're losing turns worth of board state.
Right.
Also, the modality of it just being able to like bounce a single piece or bounce every single piece.
Yeah.
It seems like, where you're really coming to the conclusion, like interaction is great, but make sure it's working for you. Make sure you're getting that value. Make sure you have the options at the right time. You have the right answer.
So like Winds of Abandon is also great in that same way that Cyclonic Rift is great because you can just exile a single creature.
So good.
Or every creature that you don't control.
Yeah, Vandal Blast, Overload is a great example of this, I guess. Damn is a great example.
Jeez, I've gotten my ass handed to me so many times by damn lately. Just makes me say damn.
Makes you just scream damn.
Yeah, and
Damn is a good card.
Damn is a great card because both rates are correct. 2 black to destroy target creature, or 2 white, 2 colorless to destroy every creature. I mean, both on rate.
Yeah, Psych Rift. Psych Rift is greatly costed, like 1 in the blue plus the 6 blue. The very good effects there.
The only reason you should be playing Wrath of God or Damnation is if you don't have access to both those colors. If you're playing black and white, Damn supersedes both of those now. Like, that's how pushed it is.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Like they gave, a 2-drop board wipe to Ad Nauseam decks. Now they don't have to worry about getting hit for 4 off the flip or anything like that.
Yeah, these are like multiple format all-stars too.
Yeah, actually, seeing anything with overload or an alternative cost that has a much higher impact, but on the face card it has a very low CMC, those cards tend to be valuable. They tend to have good effects and be well costed.
And if you can build your deck around the commander that has removal stapled to it, you were telling me about the Kenrith deck that you were watching that was using his abilities in a unique way to like kill his own things. To like go into battle, pump an opponent's creature that was blocking his creature, so get the death trigger.
I mean, that's just because Kenrith loves abusing Dockside. So yeah, they were saying like someone was swung at them with a 1/1, and then they just gave it a +1/+1 counter to make it a 2/2, and then was able to kill their Dockside by blocking, and then just reanimated Dockside on top of the stack.
Yeah, I absolutely love Hapatra. Like, it was the first deck I ever built.
Very interactive deck.
Very interactive. The interaction is stapled to the commander, and
in the form of neg1 counters.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever she deals combat damage, she gets to put a neg1 counter on target creature, and it's so flexible. It's like you hit one opponent, and then you put the neg1 counter on a different opponent's creature, removing something, or just like in general, just creating a snake for yourself is valuable in that deck. You guys have seen it enough times.
You're just making loops.
Yeah.
Going
You're just
infinite.
making loops.
You're just doing classic Evan stuff, going infinite.
Yeah, it's funny that I don't win those games.
Yeah. I mean, you dawdle for a while. You look at some cards, you make some tokens.
Enemy number one.
Yeah, generate some counters. You do a lot of stuff.
Like 2 weeks ago I played that deck, and I had turn forward the Hapatra Yawgmoth combo out there, wiped the board, probably saw 20 to 30 additional cards, and still lost the game because I just did not fall into a tutor or...
You baited all the removal.
I baited all the removal, and so the game lasted like 3 hours, which you never want to see.
So you just died, and everybody else had like 35.
Yeah, I got like 3 more slushies just waiting for that game to end. I also love, as far as like permanent-based like removal and stacks, Cinder Vines is one of my favorite pieces too.
Kind of Oro Silence-y.
Yeah, it punishes those storm decks, and like I'm playing it right now because it is like you just pay 1, sack it, and destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it deals damage to that permanent's controller. So 2 damage.
Do you finally remember the name of the card that you're super hot on that falls into this category? Outland Liberator, the one you just bought a bunch of.
Oh yeah, I did buy a bunch.
Yeah, I love that card, and like just having the sacrifice ability to remove artifact or enchantment on the front, and then if it flips, then you still have the sacrifice option, but you're getting the attack triggers on top of it. It is just super interactive, super sticky. It requires a removal piece. Someone's going to have to remove that if they don't want every single thing they own and love to be destroyed.
Yeah. Outland Liberator and Cathar Commando being in the same set, like when we saw those
both
initially,
great cards.
I mean, yeah, the Outland Liberator is printed at uncommon, which kind of made Cathar Commando slide down the value scale because people saw it as common, but it has Flash, and so it is essential.
Flash is super important. It makes it instant speed.
I honestly
at the risk of sounding redundant.
I think Cathar Commando's better.
Even
though you have the back on, like the stapled removal on attack triggers for the werewolf side, it's like. It's so inconsistent to rely on the werewolf.
Guys, if there's stacks at your table too, there's a deafening silence effect in play where you're limited to 1 spell a turn. You want that flash.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, like last week, my Jetmir plays a lot of rule effects, and I was able to like Eternal Witness back up the Cathar Commando for my 1 spell, and then was that rotation later cast the Cathar Commando. So like flashes, nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, more and more I'm seeing Cathar Commando as a generous gift on a creature. Like,
it doesn't hit everything that Generous Gift would.
Right.
But again, like you're saying, like, just in play the interaction that synergizes with your deck. So if you're in a creature deck, Cathar Commando might be better than Generous Gift.
Yeah, and the typing on it, the flexibility.
Human?
It's a creature, it's a human, and it destroys an artifact or enchantment, something that might be slowing you down. Interaction is such this wide conversation. It's hard to like bring it into focus and really focus on any one like aspect of it.
We'll probably have more episodes on it.
Yeah, more episodes on like sorcery speed or instant speed or single target or widespread. And
if there's particular aspects of this topic, interaction that you guys want to hear us talk about, for sure, mention that down below in the comments. Mm-hmm. We have thoughts on all of them.
We love interaction. We love playing. This is how, in my mind,
interact with us.
Yeah, interact with us.
We want to interact with
on
you.
Interaction. Interact with us on interaction. I love interaction. You're right. It is my favorite topic.
Yeah, I guess the speed of your decks is I'm envious of it because you see so many more cards than I do in any game. I could build the same deck as you. I wouldn't play it the same way. You're just all gas, and so your interaction. I'm always terrified.
Boom, roasted.
Yeah. I'm always terrified of it because you always have a full hand, which is just something mentally threatens me.
Yeah.
You assume that he's holding up interaction to
At all
stop
times.
you. At all
usually,
times. Yeah.
Usually right. But also, how great is that interaction? Just that the interaction of the mind game, thinking that I have the interaction in hand.
Yeah, and when you have to go into a game against absolute strangers, you go into your LGS and you're sitting there and you're just meeting people for the first time. If you're conscious of hand size and you're trying to get something going on your board, it's just always good to be conscious of removal. Whether you've been conditioned to believe so, it is a healthy habit to say, like, you know what, maybe I need to draw something out. That's like another aspect of removal and interaction, is that the way you play the game, how you assemble your win condition, is just as important to how you interact with your...
Changes your play style.
Yeah. You need to be able to draw things out, you know, and that's... I guess that's one of the mistakes I made in last week's game, was just not playing to, like, I was playing to my outs, right? But I could have done it in a different way that drew the interaction, and I could have assembled like a stronger win condition later in the game.
That is, I find, more and more the hardest part of playing competitive Commanders, just knowing when to go for it versus when to sandbag.
Yep. Yeah.
You're not always the beatdown.
You're
which
not
is,
always the beatdown.
A classic topic here in Magic the Gathering.
Totally.
And so
Totally
we'll return to this subject at a later date. And I think there's one thing that we want to like talk about, and we want to do a little bit of a game, like a post-game rewind today. So this is a little bit of a segment post-discussion, but we actually had some really great games. We don't play high power in our pod very often, but when we do bring the gas, it definitely turns it up to 11. We have a few things that we want to talk about, so like talking through our mistakes, or insane plays that we saw others doing, or insane plays that you made. So Jordan, did you see anything or make any mistakes?
Did I make any mistakes? I never make any mistakes. Next topic. Not that I can think of for this sesh, but I will talk about a sick S play.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't me, but I brought my Jetmir deck to the table, and I let Kyle borrow it, and he won that game quite spectacularly. And just seeing the opportunity, I was kind of coaching him a little bit. It was the first time playing the deck, and just seeing the opportunity, he had a Captain Siste trigger, and he was tutoring, and I told him to grab the Linvala, because Evan was playing Zakama, which is a combo deck, but he had value cast Zakama, which is on the battlefield, which is just a terrifying presence. So shutting out Zakama, Ritter had a Protean Hulk that was delayed and was about to come back into play with Dina, his commander, on the battlefield, which is a sacrifice outlet, but you have to activate to sacrifice. And Evan, as we said with Song of the Dryads, had nerfed Thrasios, but I was working actively to get Thrasios back, and he just grabbed a Linvala, and now I was like, all right, well, I guess I just never play Thrasios for the rest of this game, because there's no way I'm removing that plus the Song of the Dryads.
As soon as I hit the board, I went, yup.
Yep, and it just, everybody took a backseat, and it was just, let's watch Kyle play Magic. And then he swung with Jetmir and Linvala, and then next turn went for the Winota, and started just snowballing out of control. It was such
Kyle loves a Winota trigger.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
It's in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, so that was absolutely fantastic to watch this deck just get absolutely out of control.
Yeah, it just got out of control so fast, because like once the Linvala was on the board, and the next turn Kyle went and he searched for Winota, and then put Winota out there, got the trigger, and
like
then
2 or 3 attack triggers on the first time.
Yes, completely locked me out of the game with by revealing a Tocatli Honor Guard.
Yeah, it was the first one, and then like he whiffed on one. I forget what the next one was, but it was like protection or something like that.
Yeah, but that just creates a hard lock. You can't activate abilities. You don't get enter the battlefield effects, and it is almost like a one-sided humility.
Yeah, just
is what it
renders
felt
rendering your options more and more useless is usually what that deck's trying to do.
Yeah, and when you play higher power games, there's not a whole lot of widespread removal, which I'm starting to regret. Like, I need to play more of it. That's why I'm playing Winds of Abandon now. Like,
we've been hotter and hotter on that card lately, as like just creature densities in general are getting more. Like, you're seeing just huge lavish battlefields. People have so many things on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, but sweepers do feel bad to have them in hand when you don't need them.
True.
Like, you're holding a 4 CMC spell that could be gas, and it's doing
100%.
nothing.
This is
right
why those
now,
modal spells like the Dam, the Cyclonic Rift, the Winds of Abandon are so good. Delayed Blast Fireball is like the new one that's been on our radar.
they're rising. They're rising on like our list. They're rising just in general in price.
Yeah, just a generally good thing to be targeting as far as removal, because sometimes just like the single target removal isn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, I do play a couple pieces in any deck. If you're playing in black, you're going to play Toxic Deluge.
Gotta.
Like, great rate on that. It's going to be relevant all the time. If when I'm in white, I'm playing Dave Judgment right now just because it's fine. It's a fine sweeper. Vanquish the Horde, though, is an excellent sweeper. Mm-hmm. It's basically a white blasphemous act.
Yeah.
You got to play it. I mean,
Blasphemous act.
Yeah.
Also good.
Also great. I mean, you got to pack at least one of them.
Fire Covenant too.
Yeah, almost every single game.
Yes.
Yeah. In pretty much any single game, like there's been a point where I wanted to either be holding the sweeper or I was hoping that someone had a sweeper or multi-target removal or something. Like Heliod's Intervention also goes off in that context.
There are a few times where you just have single target removal in hand and you look at the board and like, this is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
This is not going to do anything.
I mean, if you're trying to disable stacks board state, you need multiple pieces that do multiple things, and that one piece of removal is not gonna, removing Archon of Emeria or Deafening Silence or Ghostly Prison by itself is not going to do it. It's not going to unravel that puzzle for you.
Well, we got absolutely sandblasted by this Jetmir deck, and there was a time when I picked up Hadouken. I picked up a lightning bolt, and I didn't have an option because after that, Kyle had established his board state to a point where everything was being buffed by an Elish Norn, and the Aven Mind Sensor had shut us out of the game. We all had
all game.
Yeah, all game. It sat there, and it was just too little, too late for me to get that Hadouken, but it would have saved the game. And I tried to use it to give, it's one of those things where it's like, I tried to kill the Aven Mind Sensor, and then it got, the lightning bolt got deflecting swatted.
That was me.
Yeah. Jordan swatted it to a different target. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, bro, I'm trying to open up the lane for all of us.
Not letting the combo deck have tutors.
Well, yeah, but the funny thing is that you see the threat that I am, and you're like, oh, he's doing it on Kyle's end steps. That must mean that he is about to go off and win by removing, the piece of stacks that's stopping him from searching his library. So, yeah, in hindsight, it makes sense. You don't know what I have. But yeah, I was just trying to open up the alleyway for all of us to get back in the game because Kyle was clearly the biggest threat. Another insane play that I saw actually had me on the receiving end of it. Ritter, when you dropped the green slime on the Smothering Tide's first trigger.
Guess what, Dad? I learned it from watching you. I saw you make that green slime play, and I immediately went online and bought one.
I'm pretty sure this is the first time it's come up in this episode, but it's a great interaction piece.
It is great. So, I mean, it's sticky because it's stable. So, here's the thing about green slime. So, 1 green, 2 colorless. When it comes in, you counter target activated ability of an enchantment or artifact.
Or triggered, yeah.
Or triggered ability. And then it also destroys it. And so there's other things in play here, which is great because, it's interaction right there. But then it's also a 2/2 body. Mm-hmm. It has flash.
If you it has flash, which is awesome.
It has foretell, which...
For some reason...
One day I'm going to find out what that does, and I'm going to see it see it happen in a game, and it's going to be pretty cool. But it is some card text.
It does say it on there.
Yeah, and I'm sure it might be relevant at some point.
You're one to find relevant card text.
Yeah, so read all the cards on a card.
Let's see.
Or all the text on a card.
Yeah, I mean, I built a Foretell deck way back with Chromium as the head before they... I don't know. I really wanted to play Dream Devourer.
There's that card that gives everything Foretell that you can build around.
Dream Devourer.
Yeah, Dream Devourer. It's just not legendary, so you can't really... rely on it being in your hand.
It's an okay mechanic.
Yeah, it's okay.
But
the green
I will say green slime doesn't even need foretell. It's stupid good.
Yeah, it's definitely underrated.
Yeah, you never see stifling as an interaction piece anymore. Tail's End is great, but you don't really see it. Nobody plays stifle. Trickbind's cool because it has split second, so you can't do anything in response, and then it stops. It's like a stifle effect, and they can't do anything for the rest of the turn. But even then, nobody plays these cards because they're just too circumstantial, really. But now that you have something that offers that plus a removal on a creature with flash, it's just so many good things on one card.
It never feels bad in hand.
Doesn't feel bad.
I'm against interaction where an interaction piece is going to feel like a dead card. If I can imagine that card feeling dead in my hand, then I'm probably going to take it out of the deck pretty early on in the deck building process. But a card like Green Slime, it seems like all upside.
There are too many good artifacts and enchantments.
It seems like it's
format.
never going to be dead. It's going to be relevant in every game at some point.
Right.
Even if you're just turning off someone's Soul Ring, just blowing up a Soul Ring and setting someone back at 2 mana. That's the difference between them going off and them not going off.
Yeah, it stops some loops that are happening, like a Basalt Monolith and a Kinnan deck. Like, there are very niche scenarios where it does save the game. Or
Underworld Breach on the stack, it's a time where you have to have an instant speed removal is when someone casts Underworld Breach, because there's usually no untapping. There's no getting back to your turn because they win.
Right.
So now you have another option in a creature-based strategy that just interacts with it and stops it right there.
Yeah, and you're trying to pioneer that in your Jetmir list too. So we've been talking about Jetmir a lot, but it's just because it is so good.
We just played it this week too, and it really did pop off, so it's kind of on our minds.
Yeah, it feels like really,
but it's kind of
right casting cost in the right colors that enables various strategies.
Yeah,
with little to no pain.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a very interactive type deck too.
Yeah, and outside of that one high-powered game, Kyle had tried his hand at playing his Joda list, which was surprising.
That can be explosive. The weakness is that it's a glass cannon. It'll develop this board state, which I'll let you explain the mechanics. You're better at explaining that stuff. But it'll develop these ridiculous board states, but then you have to wait around for your next turn to do anything with it.
Out a lot.
Yeah.
So there can be the inclusion. There's always ways to buff the deck up, including a Samut would be great for that deck to cast a Samut and cascade into something would be insane.
I will say though, even though it might be a little dirtily, is that you have to invest a lot of mana, untap, get to that value piece. But he played interaction. He played low-cost interaction, which means all throughout the first half of the game, he was interacting. He Swords to Plowshares. I had a Devoted Druid.
Needed to happen.
Yeah, so he had interaction. So I'm just saying that, yes, it's not a competitive deck, but by having low-costed interaction, it kept him in the game. It kept him relevant. And it's just a great way for any mid-range deck or more of a casual player to punch up, is by just having interaction and being able to kind of keep a game from getting out of control.
Right.
Yeah. You can make any deck better by adding interaction.
Exactly right. Yeah. That is our thesis statement. Please put more interaction.
So if you guys haven't, if you guys are uninitiated with Joda, the new Joda from Dominaria United, it is a +1/+1 for each legendary creature you control, and then it also has a cascade for legendary spells, and you have to hit a legendary creature that has mana value less than it. So Kyle's build for that is using Partner With as the primary mechanic. So every time he casts a legendary creature, it's likely with Partner With, and you cascade into something, it enters the battlefield, you get card advantage by searching for the Partner With, and then the other legendary creature enters the battlefield, getting more card advantage by searching for its Partner With.
You're ending the turn with 5 legendaries.
Yeah. It's just
too
a
much.
shame it didn't get back around to him. I think at that point you would cast a Damnation or something.
Yeah, I overloaded Damn.
That's right. Yeah, there you go. Damn is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back your board wipes.
But that about does it for us here today. We're gonna because we could talk about it all day. If you guys enjoyed this show, be sure to follow us. You can follow all of our links down in the description below. We have a little link tree set up there on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. If you're on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more by hitting that little bell. And you can find us on most major podcast channels now. So we're on Spotify, Audible, and iTunes. Thank you guys for listening.
I'm going to pose a question to the audience here.
Oh, yeah.
What interaction piece do you like that we didn't name? Because there's so many.
Gosh, there are just so many that are unlisted. Please,
looking forward to reading your comments.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning to the MoxStars podcast. We'll catch you next week. Episodes every Friday.
Yeah.